presentations. We are pleased to have David Robinson here with us. David is PhD, is the program director for Marriage and Family Therapy program at the Utah State University here. Currently teaches pre-practicum, practicum, collaborative healthcare, and psychopharmacology and sex therapy courses in the Marriage and Family Therapy program. He recently developed a new undergraduate and graduate course in addictions and the family. His research and clinical interests are in medical family therapy, collaborative healthcare, rural mental health, and community-based participatory research. We'll turn the time over to you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Is this working? Okay. So, as he said, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I do clinical training, and a lot of what I've done in my research is to really start to engage the students in something other than just reading the book, taking a test, and moving forward. And so when I was developing this course last fall, actually it was in the middle of the course, because the whole course was an engagement of getting them out into the community. So addictions in the family, you can imagine what sort of things they had to do. They had to go to AA meetings, they had to go to Al-Anon meetings. A few of them went to Overeaters Anonymous meetings, which that meeting's a little hard for Anonymous because there's only a couple of people that show up, but it works okay. And so as I was getting to the final, just having that be just a B, C, D final, it just really felt flat for me. And so I was sitting somewhere one day and I thought, let's make this really interactive and let's make them do something that will make a difference in people's lives. So we spent the whole semester talking about addictions and what does it look like and where does it come from and where are the problems and what happens actually in Cache Valley. And so that was what we did is integrated this service learning idea of having them engage in something that could make a difference in other people's lives, not just having them learn the material and be able to regurgitate it. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the ideas of service learning, and some of you out there may be experts in service learning. This is my adaptation to service learning, so don't be all upset because it's not the special way that you see it. But talking about, this is kind of the overview, what is service learning, how do you engage a class in service learning, and then finally the two examples from my class of where students had done that. So how many of you have used service learning in your classes? Okay, good. So if you want to trade me places, I'd be happy to let you, and there will be some time at the end, hopefully, for us to talk a little bit about what you're doing in your classes to really get your students moving forward. But this is the definition: a form of experiential education in which students engage in activities that address human and community needs together with structured opportunities intentionally designed to promote student learning and development. Reflection and reciprocity are key components of service learning. And so that's a really important thing is, are they having a chance to engage with the material, and then can they think about how it applies to what goes on in their lives? And this idea of reciprocity is, are they making a difference in anybody's lives? And I've kind of gone through and thought about, could this apply to all disciplines across the university? And I think it probably could. Maybe you'll have to be a little bit more creative in your personal area, but I think there's lots of things that you can do to get your students to be engaged. So looking through the literature, these next few slides talk about, why might you as a faculty member want to consider this as an option? And here's what the research says, that it's exciting to see your students engaged in learning for reasons other than the test. So how many of you feel like you spent all this time teaching your students and then they don't do well on the test? Has that ever happened? You guys are all experts, but some professors that doesn't happen, and that can be really discouraging. Another one is that can be helpful for the P&T because it actually engages the students. So this is where students can actually give you better evaluations because they're really getting in the nitty-gritty and they're learning it for a different reason rather than to regurgitate it on a test. And so that can be one way of doing that, because they start to get excited about this. I had 26 students. It was a brand new class, and it didn't get out until July. So getting the 26 students was quite an accomplishment. But all of them, at the end of the semester, they were so excited about addictions. And most of them started out being pretty biased, thinking, oh, those people over there that do those nasty, rotten things. But by the end of the semester, they had gotten to the point where, wow, these are people that are struggling. These are people that need some help. And how can I do something about it? And that's what they did at the end of the process. It highlights the interdisciplinary connection for both students and faculty. So if they're out in the community, they're engaging with other people, do you see how they stop seeing things through the bubble that might exist in their own environment where they're being educated? And that's a really important thing. Plus, it helps you. Sometimes students will let you know of resources that you didn't even know existed. I'm a little nervous about this class because I don't know if I can say this out loud, but being forced to change my class, it's strictly online. And so I'm going to be trying to engage students in their own communities that's not here in Logan. And I'm excited about it, but we're going to see how it works this next semester. So some of the challenges and rewards here, a few of the challenges is the cultural competence of students. Sometimes you have to make sure before you send them out that they know a little bit about the culture they're going into. So for the AA meetings, I had to give them a little bit of idea that, hey, you probably don't want to just barge in there and say, hey, I'm a student looking at you guys. You needed to be respectful. You needed to go up and talk to the facilitator beforehand and say, would it be okay that I sit in the meeting? Needed to know how to talk about what was going on. What do they share? What don't they share? If there's some cultural aspects of it, they need to know a little bit about the culture they're being engaged in. And so that can be a problem if you just say, go and visit this whatever community, but they don't have any preparation. They could be quite offensive possibly and could look badly on you. So you want to make sure that you've done that. Time commitment can be big. Although I think you can do this so it doesn't really wear you out. You don't have to do all the legwork. This is where the students can actually find opportunities to make that better. Grading can be hard, right? Anything that's subjective gets a little bit more difficult, especially if any of you were at the narcissistic presentation before here. You put those students and put a subjective evaluation on it. That can be even more difficult. So grading can be somewhat difficult. And then the possibility of political and social time bombs. You may have a student that has a political agenda, and so they go marching down to a community. What am I thinking of? The community leaders, and they demand for Logan City to change this specific policy because of their own personal belief system. And so you have to make sure that they're not going to be doing things like that. Now, does it mean that they shouldn't be active in their community? No, it doesn't mean that, but they need to be careful that they don't go too far. So some of the rewards for us, that transformation from teaching to engagement is just a lot of fun. And so I hope that you can try this on a little bit. Students respond to a well-designed student learning opportunity because it's different, because they've spent their whole life reading, practicing, testing, and then that last part, engagement, they haven't done it as much. And so it can be really a lot of fun for us to see them do that. And it also eliminates the staleness of the course. If you've taught a course for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe you need to revitalize yourself a little bit. And so this can be one way of bringing that in, because, again, you can bring what your students teach you back into your course the next year, and it can be really helpful. So here are a few quotes about faculty members who've done this. And the first one is, if you look at the impact you're having on the community and think of the impact you could have with the number of students that you'll have contact with, you're going to have a greater impact on the local and international community with your work, and that's the thing from day one which sustained me. Okay? So it's not just the students that are in your class, but I'll show you an example of that. My students have reached probably 1,200 additional people. So 26 expanded out to that. And then there's some pretty important things that they shared. Another quote, "It is that excitement, and when you see students and that they are talking about what they're doing and their future, and even some small way you can say that I played a role in that, that's just an unbelievable feeling, and it's what sustains me and keeps me excited about the job." And sometimes our jobs maybe feels a little bit mundane, so trying something different can be a lot of fun. I wouldn't recommend doing it 3 weeks before the end of the semester, which I did, but you're a little bit ahead of the game. It worked out fine, everything turned out, but it was a little scary that, is this going to happen? And it did. And then the final quote, "That's what I think about the primary benefits as an instructor for doing this kind of work. I'm getting constant feedback about the course, and I stay informed about the latest developments. Students come back and report about all the work they're doing in the field, and that's kind of exciting to always stay on the cutting edge." So lots of fun, right? This can be something that you can do. What sort of disciplines do we have here? I know we have some FCHD people. What other disciplines are in the audience? Agriculture, good. Music, English, interpreting, Spanish. Okay, so all of the ones that have been mentioned, you can take an assignment or a whole class or a final project and do some student learning opportunities for this. And here's what the students say about this service learning. One is they said it has a positive impact on understanding social issues. So getting engaged makes a whole lot of difference in these people's lives as opposed to reading about what happens in some other part of the environment. And this can be really helpful because then as they learn to engage on multiple levels, so you may be teaching English and part of your process is getting them into a city council meeting and they start getting involved in, wow, I can make a difference in my own community. So it doesn't have to necessarily be just your specific environment, but it gets them thinking about me as a citizen. And I think that's part of our job as professors is to engage our students in lots of ways of looking at it, not just our specific area, but how can we make them good citizens? Personal insight can be really helpful. It's one thing if you, like my students, thought of all of those people who did those sorts of things. Once they started engaging with this material, they really started learning that, you know, I'm not perfect myself, and I can't change either. One of the things that they do right at the beginning of classes, they have to go 8 weeks giving up something to try to show what addiction might look like. And everybody thinks, oh, that would be easy, but it's not easy at all. Giving up Coca-Cola or I used to teach in Nebraska. I did this here. I had students giving up alcohol, giving up cigarette smoking. And again, there's some way of engaging the students in something better for them. Cognitive development, anytime you get people past the information stage to the engagement phase, obviously they're going to remember that more. And my students still, from that class, still come up and talk to me. In fact, they've said, why are you doing this class online? But we're going to make it work so it works well for them. And then the 4 R's of service learning is reality, that it really is the stuff that they're reading in the books happens in today's life. And until I brought some of the police officers with all the drugs that happen in Cache Valley, a lot of them were oblivious that drugs actually existed in Cache Valley. So there is some reality check there. The reciprocity that, hey, part of why you're going to college is you want to give back in some way, and this is one way of engaging them on that. Reflection is another way to just take a step back and what does this mean to me, and why would I care about this? And you may engage some students in this and they realize that I don't care about this, and they maybe will change their major, and that would be good for them so they don't starve to death after they graduate. And finally, responsibility. It's part of our job and part of the students' opportunity is to feel like they have some say in what happens in today's society. There's too many people that check out and say, I don't care anymore. And I think this is something that can be done in our classes to challenge them on that. So I just wanted to just review this really quickly here. The idea of understanding social issues. And you can see here just some of the sample things that they looked at. That, perceptions of homelessness, elderly, disabled, different races, cultures, ethical and moral values. All of these things as they engage in a community setting, they're going to start interacting with different people and realizing that different people don't have to necessarily be bad. So that's one good thing. Personal insight here, again, identity and awareness of oneself in terms of strengths and weaknesses, career aspirations. So these ways of actually looking at what am I doing and why do I even care about what direction I'm going, so that I can decide what that means to me overall. And then finally, cognitive development. I've hit that one out of the park here on just getting them to the engagement part really makes a difference in what happens there. So talking specifically about my class, so it was the New Addictions and Family class, and that entire semester they were engaging across the process. And they were taking these personal challenges to change themselves, to change who they were as individuals, and to really decide that they are going to do something different. So we developed this service learning process, which is, by the way, that's a lot of fun if you have a syllabus and you want to change it mid-semester. You kind of had to talk over as a class, and they all agreed that with, anytime you are willing to take out a multiple choice test and give them something else, they all jumped on board with that. They didn't know what they were getting themselves into, however, because it was a lot of work, but it worked out okay. And I'm going to show you kind of the ideas. I had them get into groups of 4, and they had to identify an addiction in the family concern. So one group did it on pornography, another did it on marijuana, one did it on cocaine, one did it on eating disorders. So there were lots of options, and they were able to do whatever they wanted. And their job was to develop a PowerPoint presentation and then transition that into a YouTube video that needed to be creative. And, that's something that I think sometimes we forget about, is that having a little bit of fun while you're learning can be helpful. And they were also required to take that YouTube video and teach it to a group. So that's kind of this other part of the service learning, is that they had to have some group that they were trying to make a difference with. So the eating disorder group, they found a group of 12 adolescent girls and gave the presentation to it. And I'm going to show that video in a minute. But I think, do you see how that can be one way of helping them take that to make a difference in people's lives? In fact, that video, I think, now has about 400 views on YouTube. And again, we're not changing the world, but it's definitely gone beyond my 26 students that were out there. And then part of the presentation, what they turned in to me was an evaluation by the students from that presentation, just to kind of, for me to feel comfortable that they actually presented it to somebody. And they also were supposed to alter the YouTube video based upon feedback if there was something that felt a little bit off. Okay? Questions about this at that point? This at that? Okay, so here's the one on eating disorders, and I think the audio is fine now.
My name is Courtney. I struggled with anorexia and bulimia for about 10 years. I'd say my eating disorder started with my idea that my worth and my value is based on my physical appearance. I would restrict myself to about 300 calories a day, which was barely enough to survive on. As soon as my parents and my friends started to figure things out, I switched to bulimia, so I would purge the little bit that I did eat. I didn't want to recover. I was really scared too, and I wanted to stay how I was. And it wasn't until I realized that I couldn't have the future I wanted if I was stuck in my eating disorder. I wanted to be able to go to college and be successful, and I wanted a family and kids of my own. And that wasn't going to be attainable with the path that I was going down. I had to decide for myself that I wanted that better future. So I ended up going to a residential treatment center for about 1.5 years, and it was there that I made most of my progress. I worked with staff and a therapist to talk about how I was feeling, and I was able to relate to other girls that were going through the same thing. And I'm able to say today that I'm confident with where I am, and I'm happy and healthy, and I know that my self-worth isn't based on my physical appearance, and that I have more to life than that. And I'm successful, and I'm doing the things that I want to do, and I'm working towards my goals. And my eating disorder was a hard time in my life, but I'm proud of the things that I went through, and I know that I wouldn't be where I am today without those struggles.
Come on, skinny love, just let's sing it. To pour a little soul we will never hear. My, 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 my. Staring at the sink of blood across the room. Right in this moment, this all is hard. And I told you to be patient, and I told you to be fine, and I told you to be balanced, and I told you to be kind. And in the morning I'll be with you, and it will be a different kind. And I'm holding all the tickets, and you'll be holding all the fines. Come on, skinny love.
I'm gonna race you to the sky, to the sky. I'm gonna race you to the sky. Come on, jump out the door. You can't hold it down no more. I'll show you how the birds learned how to fly. Don't mind leaving your nest. Don't mind making a mess. This might be the best day of your life.
See how that was a lot of fun, and the response from those adolescent girls was huge because they learned things that they didn't know, and maybe even we were able to prevent one of them from developing an eating disorder. We don't know, but it was a great process for the students. Now, this next one is kind of funny because these are the apple polishers from the class, and you'll see that from this video. This one's a little bit shorter, so.
somebody to cheat without necessarily labeling it cheating, basically.
It's also just so addicting that that's becomes the prime thing that the person just always wants to do and puts the not first.
It is a really large problem, and it's affecting more and more people, more and more victims. More and more of the child pornography cases are homegrown cases where people take pictures of their own children. Don't be taking inappropriate pictures of yourself and sending them to people. Even if you think you know who they are, or even if you know who they are, don't be doing that. If you take those kinds of pictures, that makes you a manufacturer of child pornography, and it makes them in possession of it. It is illegal for them to ask you to take those pictures, and it's also illegal for you to take them and send them to somebody. And once they're out there, they're really hard to get back.
One of the things on this is I couldn't put together a YouTube video, but these kids know how to do it. And so I gave them the assignment, and nobody asked any questions on how to do that. There was enough people in the class that knew how to do the process. So I didn't teach them how to do that. They figured out how to do it themselves. So some of you probably already know how to do it. I don't, but these students are much further along than at least I am on the technical part. So the impact of the students, again, that full engagement. And the students really, they would come in and say, guess how many hits we have on our YouTube video. They were so excited that they had done it. And I think we're probably around 12 to 1,500 people that have viewed their videos. And there were 7 videos produced, all in all. So that's kind of the overview of my view of service learning. I think it's a fun way to engage. I'd like to challenge all of you to think about the process of maybe a project or an activity in your class that's gotten a little boring or mundane for you. Think about how you can get the students to engage in the community setting in a different way so that they can have a little bit of fun with it. And maybe they'll teach you something about how your course should be taught in that specific area. And this will be the final exam for my online class, is they'll be producing these YouTube videos again. So questions, thoughts?
When they produce them, they go, I guess for your online class, are you going to make it so that they can watch everyone's video?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the class, that was part of the final. We met on the final day, and they actually presented their whole presentation and then showed their video. And so everybody got to see it, and they all have links to each other's videos. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, have this specific or official service learning designation. Utah State University service learning program.
No. No, they don't. It doesn't. I should do that. Now I know that it exists. I can do that. Thank you. Yes? Yeah, so we had a rubric, so they had to produce the video. So it was the full process. They had to produce the video. It had to have it had to have some outside expert. So in the eating disorders, they decided that having somebody who'd been through it was the expert. Others found national people. Some used police officers. So they had to have somebody. So there were specific criteria that they had to abide by. And then I had them actually grade each other just to make sure that one person wasn't doing all the work, which is problems with group work, right? And so they were able to design this, there's usually 2 of them were in charge of getting all of the data, the information, and then 2 of them moved towards the video production and the YouTube production. So yes, having an outlined grading rubric at the beginning is really helpful. Anybody have thoughts as I was talking about what you're going to do with one of your assignments? Back here and then over here.
I use service learning in the leadership class that I teach, and students are assigned, they put the group similar to yours, then they're assigned goals.
Good.
As part of that group on what they should do. Some contact the service learning office, and then maybe some are in charge of scheduling and that kind of thing. I really like your idea of adding the presentation side.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, everybody loves YouTube, and so now we're live and on YouTube. So thanks for sharing. Thank you. Yes.
I'm an instructor for Connections Professional Orientation course, and it surprises me how many students say, I've never done community service before. I'm shocked by it, saddened by it, but it gives them an opportunity. It doesn't have to be, and for professional orientation, they don't do something large like that. We do small projects in a 2-hour, 3-hour periods, all they have time for. But
Right.
it gives them the motivation and at least the information that they can do small things to make people.
Absolutely. And I think, it was gratifying as a professor to really feel at the end that they had learned something, and I think they were changed by the class. Not because I provided them with opportunities to engage with the information. Final, question? We're not, no, because we weren't doing research, and then they just, they were producing their own YouTube video, and so they just let the people know, hey, are you okay with us putting this on YouTube? And so it was less about us doing research on the people and versus kind of sharing some ideas. Yeah. Yes. Great. That's part of I moved here mid-career, and so I'm still learning what Utah State is all about, and so I didn't know that even existed. There's probably lots of things I don't know, because I live off campus. I'm in the little Family Life Center at the bottom of campus, so sometimes I feel like... Okay. So thanks for that. That's a great idea, so I'll contact them and see what options. Anybody think of an option that they're going to try in this semester about service learning? Okay. She's going to put YouTube into hers, so that will be fun. All right, thanks so much for coming, and best wishes on trying this out.